Hello, folks. We are back for the final episode of Movies on the Islands Month, and we have a wonderful special guest who's laughing at a ridiculous name this month. It's Cody Newberry is here.
Hello. Hello.
Do you like our name? Do you like how we name months really stupid things?
Well, it's just perfect for you and Zach. Like, the stuff that works so well is Zach's quirkiness about things. So why wouldn't he do a entire series based on movies on Island? Like,
I wonder whose idea this was.
Is it Lucas's?
No, it's my idea.
Yeah.
It's to tie in the Suicide Squad. It takes place on an island.
It was actually
well, it's a fun way for you guys to do stuff too, because you guys could have done the traditional route of comic book movies or something like this, and like you make it fun and feature movies that don't get talked about as much as everything else. So it's smart.
Actually,
like
we got stuck. We got stuck in. We actually did get stuck initially in Suicide Squad land, being like, oh, should we do DC? Should we do comic books? Should we do team up? Should we do anti-heroes? And one thing we just consistently ran into is that there are a lot of movies like that. So a lot of them get talked to death. A lot of them are very similar. If you do an anti-hero month, you do like 4 movies that are basically exactly the same story because they don't really have a lot of different ways to tell anti-heroes that exist.
Zach could have talked about Deadpool, and that would have been fun.
We should do a full 2-hour episode of Deadpool. I never get to go deep.
We would get banned if we.
I will gladly talk about how crap that movie is. So
I think I'm the highest of the 3 of us on Deadpool, and I might have given it 3 out of 5 stars.
Pretty close. Yeah, I think I'm 2.5, maybe 2.
It's not very good. But we're not talking about Deadpool. We're talking about more fun movies. We're ending the month talking about Shutter Island, which sort of falls into category number 2 of movies on islands, which is category 1 is the island is someplace they have to go to do a mission, and number 2 is the island is a place where mysterious, weird, and crazy stuff can happen because it's isolated from the rest of the world. Before we jump all the way into Shutter Island, let's do a little.
Is this kind of both? They're kind of doing a mission on this. You're trying to solve a crime.
But the movie is more about the fact that by being an island, they are isolated and can't escape or go to the real world or interact with the real world. They're very much stuck in this one location. But last letterbox movie first. Zach Ford, talk about a movie that's not Shutter Island.
I definitely forgot what I was going to talk about. Talk about one in theaters. I saw Green Knight last weekend. David Lowery, I'm pretty sure I've talked about him on the show before. He is one of my favorite working directors because even though he kind of jumps genres, this is a medieval fantasy. It kind of like the artsy form of Beowulf, based on an epic poem like Beowulf was. He's done kind of spiritual dramas with Ghost Story. He's done family films, Pete's Dragon, just a great, fun heist movie with Old Man and the Guns. He jumps around, but no matter what the genre is, or no matter how tragic parts of the story is, or how suspenseful parts of the story is, I'm just very deeply calmed by his style and his pace. Green Knight has parts of it that is really creepy and tragic, and I'm still feel like I'm exhaling the whole time. And I think it's the music. It's slowed down at the right level that my heartbeat can just match up with. And I vibe with what David Lowery is doing. And he's just making some of the most beautiful looking and sounding music, aesthetically, just the most pleasing movies out there. Now I'm blanking on the composer. What's his name? Lucas.
Oh.
I messaged you about him right after I saw the movie.
Yeah, but he's not a famous name, so the name didn't stick around. I'll look it up. Daniel Hart.
Daniel Hart, who has done all the David Lowery scores. I think he's the second best composer under the age of 50. Working out there after Nicholas Bertel. Between this and The Old Man with the Gun, they're just the movies I find really chill. The soundtrack score. Some of the ones I return to the most just because they provide the same thing for me. But and there's just a great earthiness to the way it's filmed, and it's lovely. I'm worried a lot of people are going to be bored by it, but I hope people can take a breath like I did and just find it with the vibe and kind of be okay to be a little confused or be a little bored sometimes. It's okay sometimes.
I have 2 questions. Question 1, does it have a lot of bouncing boobs and weird nude shots like Beowulf?
No, they should have had. Dev Patel actually had to hide his penis for the whole hour and a half. He just had to keep different things covering his groin, chandeliers. This is a Beowulf reference. If you don't get it, Cody. Beowulf the whole time. He's like naked half the time, and they just find different things to cover his penis.
I would pay money to watch Cody watch the 3 Robert Zemeckis CGI movies in a row. That would be
not a good time.
I'm very excited about this, to be honest. I was really looking forward to it. I think Dev Patel is somebody that is always great, but never gets the like top level billing that you'd like him to get. Like he has he's at Oscar hype. He has a lot of awards hype for a lot of his stuff, but he often, and I think in some parts because of the fact that he is not what we traditionally look at as a leading man, and part of that maybe due to his race. I think he does sometimes get pushed into like a secondary category and doesn't always get the hype or platform he deserves. So I'm always excited to see him get projects with really talented directors. Recently, I think one of the big problems for him has been recently he's worked with a lot of nobody directors, first time directors, kind of studio people. Like this is one of the first times recently he's actually worked with somebody who is clearly talented and at least somewhat near his own level.
He had personal history of David Copperfield with what's his face, who is in some way.
In some respects, yeah.
Well, Dev Patel has talked about he avoids blockbusters anymore after Last Airbender. He's kind of scared to do these big movies, and he's been offered a lot. So I think he's just more interested in doing the artsy indie movies. Something that I forget about often is he is a year younger than me. He was only 31 years old. He was 17 or 18 when he did Slumdog Millionaire.
He's a super.
So he has so much of a career left, and if the world survives the next 10 years as a planet, I think Dev Patel could go down as an all-time great. He is not near his prime. Prime for actors. Think of when Leo really started to reach what we know as Leo was late 30s as we started to evolve from young Leo to be taken as a serious blockbuster drama actor. I think he has a huge career ahead of him.
It's definitely possible. I would like to see a little bit better career choices. If you look at his recent IMDb, he has about one good movie for every 3 non-existent or forgettable things. Cody, you interested in Green Knight? Do you like David Lowery? Dev Patel, thoughts?
So I don't believe I've seen a David Lowery film off the top of my head. I like Dave Patel. I like Slumdog Millionaire. I liked Lion. I know not everybody was a huge fan of that one, but I like Lion. I thought Lion was super good. I haven't seen the David Copperfield movie. It's on my watch list. But I like him as an actor. I've been told that I will hate The Green Knight, and that normally when I get told that I'll hate, you're not the only one. When I get told that I'll hate a movie, most people are correct. There's very few times that the upset happens, and I'm like, oh, that was actually really good. I'm probably going to still see it because I'm trying to watch a lot of movies from 2021 because 2020 sucked. I'm going to check it out. I don't know how I'll feel. People that I follow on Letterboxd are positive on it, and some people that clearly don't have taste in films, but they still put it high. So, I
think as far as David Lowery is concerned, I watch Old Man with a Gun, watch Pete's Dragon. I think you could be into those. Don't watch the other ones. Definitely don't watch Ghost
Story. Do not watch the Ghost Story. Do not watch
Ain't the By Saints, maybe. That's a maybe.
I think Cody
I looked at Ghost Story and I said not a chance. I already
eats pie with her hands for 8 minutes.
I'm not even a big fan of that one. That one kind of is.
I like it.
But you're telling me not to go see The Green Knight. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's the closest to Ghost Story of his filmography. But.
I do think. Yeah, I think that everything I've heard about this is not a traditional epic swords and armor movie. This is much weirder and more esoteric.
You really take it as a coming of age movie because thematically that's more what's going for.
I will also say I would concur. I do think Cody would like Old Man and the Gun because Robert Redford is real good.
I've heard that.
Who doesn't like Robert Redford? Cody, what's the last thing you logged on Letterboxd that is not Shutter Island? In case you logged Shutter Island.
Oh, do I have to do the exact last thing I logged?
Okay. We allow you some flexibility. If you have watched something that you have no take on and no interest in talking about, happy to let you.
Well, I would rather not argue with you guys on Cabaret. I would really like to not argue with you guys on other things. I went with a Coen Brothers movie that people told me I would absolutely hate, and it was Burn After Reading. I enjoyed that. A lot of people, Boatman, Coho, people that said, "Oh, you don't like Coens." Well, some Coens you won't like this one. I found it super enjoyable. I thought all the characters were hilarious throughout it. I love John Malkovich. Besides when he goes full crazy, I predict that like in about 30 years of me, me screaming at people. I think Brad Pitt is one of Brad Pitt's funniest roles that he's ever done, and they thought that I would hate Brad Pitt in the movie, which is one of the craziest takes because he was by far the best character in the film. I think this is I think this is an underrated Coen Brothers movie because I don't hear a ton of people praise it or talk about it as much as the bigger ones. But yeah, if you guys haven't seen Burn After Reading, I would definitely check it out. I think Burn After Reading is really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's an insane take that you wouldn't like this film. It's weird and goofy, but it's not like bizarre weird that would be a turnoff. And especially the Brad Pitt, like it's one of the few movies where Brad Pitt kind of like takes his attractiveness and like his sex appeal by the horns, and then just plays the dumbest character on the face of the earth. I enjoy it too. To me, it's like second, third tier Coens. I like some stuff more than it, but it's certainly. I also don't think they're trying to do anything as groundbreaking as some of their other work. Like to me, it feels like it's like a movie they do in between like the really hardcore stuff, just to be like kind of fun and just kind of enjoy hanging out with some great actors and doing some fun stuff. Yeah,
it's like right out of the Jump Street. Like somebody like dies in the film, they go to J.K. Simmons and he's like, "Just take care of it. We're done," and move on. Like those stuff, it was completely silly. They weren't trying to do anything, but like when John Malkovich and Brad Pitt's character sits in that car together and they like talk about the deal for the money. It's just I thought it was hilarious throughout. So yeah.
I think they just like to do their spin on different genres, and that's what this was an experiment. How do you do their version of essentially like a spy or a conspiracy movie of like people getting stuck in the middle of a spy conspiracy? So I think that's not. I don't want to dismiss it as not as ambitious as the other ones. I think that's putting us in the habit of dismissing comedies and thinking serious dramas have a lot more ambition and artfulness to them.
That's not what I'm saying.
Often,
I think Lebowski is one of their brothers. Is there one of their most like interest, like the movies they're trying the hardest for? I think is Big Lebowski. So I was not trying to make that be a comedy versus drama thing.
But I just think the wackiest comedies that the Coen Brothers do often get dismissed as their lesser films, thinking this and Hail Caesar. And I mean, Raising Arizona has a huge fan base, but there's also a lot of polarizing takes on Raising Arizona as well. That they just don't get taken as in the same regard as like No Country for Old Men because of its spiritual qualities. I don't have a specific take on Burn After Reading. This is why I'm filibustering by saying my thoughts on this because I haven't seen it since it came out. And I don't fully remember, but
that's fair.
Love me some Bradley Pitt.
That's true.
So the last thing I watched besides Shutter Island was a franchise entry in one of Cody's favorite franchises, Star Trek. But I believe Cody does like this one. It's Star Trek 2009, the reboot, which is my favorite film in the entire Star Trek franchise. I love this was to me my introduction to Star Trek and the reason that I was even willing to go back and watch the older ones. I think that Pine is so good in these films. I think Quinto is really good. I think Cho is really good, and Yelchin is, R.I.P. is just great, and Saldana, it's one of the few examples I've seen in film where that they have rebooted a franchise and had to recast a bunch of famous characters and almost universally just nailed it. Like I feel like every time they do that, they always miss somebody. There's like one person that gets stuck in the outliers and like, well, we like 5 of the 6 castings, but not all of them. And I think they just did such a good job. I didn't mention Urban. I think he's great as Bones. I think Peg is great. It's just a really fun movie. And I know that like some of the hardcore Star Trek people like bashing it for being not as like deep and philosophical as some of the other stuff, but it's also just way more fun than a lot of that earlier stuff. It's enjoyable. It's fast paced. It's got action. It's got comedy. It's just a really good blockbuster, and kind of like a really smart choice by Abrams, a director that I a lot of times feel like doesn't have a lot of interesting ideas. I think what he did with that in terms of bringing it into a modern age and like gaining an entire new audience for Star Trek as a, like just as a brand is just a really, really large accomplishment. And it's just like a fucking great movie to watch. It's so much fun.
Yeah, my issue with the older Star Treks is they look like TV movies and they have the pace of TV episodes. And I think people, because they have a fandom for the universe, kind of give them way too much credit and give them a leeway with saying these kind of look like shit and look like they were made for $100. So that's why Star Trek 2009 is the best movie of the ones I've seen. I've seen like 5 because it's an actual movie. Because it's like made with a budget to what the universe should be treated as. You know, it's a big grand space story. This is where they put in the production design and got movie star actors and not TV actors to carry it. You can say Zack Quint's a TV actor, but he does good in the movie. So I think it's a lot of fun. I also loved Into the Darkness because I have no love for the Wrath of Khan or classic Star Trek, so it didn't bother me that they were pulling that off. I thought it was a fun, exciting movie. I had no idea who Khan was at the time. It worked.
That's fair. That's fair. Cody?
Yeah, I despise old Star Trek. Like, I think that's one of the most misguided things. Like, when people are like, the TV show, if you like the TV show, I've never seen an episode, so I will give you TV show. But these movies are gosh awful. They are so fucking boring to me. And everybody hits me with the same line. Well, you're just not. It's more educated. It's more. It uses your brain more than lightsabers and blasters and blah. I said, no, it does not. The motion picture doesn't give you anything to like. You just stare into space like these people do on a travel. I think Wrath of Khan has moments that are really good, but the problem was I saw this movie before I saw any of those. Like, if I grew up on Star Trek, of course I'd probably have like, oh well, the charm of it. No. Then I watch Star Trek 09. I'm like, this stuff is hot garbage compared to this. This stuff's a lot of fun. They make like the space adventures, like they're scientists and they're stuff like that, and they're like they're searching space, but they make it fun and exciting. Where Star Trek, the older ones, don't, and the Next Generation's absolute trash. So like this is like that's why I like all 3. I like Into Darkness. I like Beyond. I want them to return. Because that's a Star Trek I can get behind. And there's like there's other franchises that I watch the other stuff first, like Planet of the Apes. Like I love the 3 with Caesar's Story from Rise and Dawn. And I watch the older ones, and I still find enjoyment in the older ones. Like it's not like just Star Trek. You know, I see good CGI or good special effects, and I think it's better. But yeah, I just think it's a complete miss on other Star Trek. But Star Trek 09's a ton of fun. Like they do those characters justice, and people that complain, well, sorry, go watch William Shatner and please tell me that he's a great actor because I'm still missing it.
Yeah,
there's great potential in the world. It was intended to be a TV show, and they made it with the TV show budget. Okay, that's the issue. People kind of, with their nostalgia, watching out children or their fandom, I think give it too much credit and unfairly treat the sequels, I think, or the modern ones, because it's not the boring shit they're used to.
I mean, I think I actually have, I enjoy all 3 generations on some respect. I'm not a universal lover of all the movies, but there are original first 6 ones I like. I think Wrath of Khan is quite good. I enjoy Search for Spock. I really like First Contact of the Next Generation. I think that one's pretty good. Next Generation is pretty iffy. I think that's might be the only good one out of those movies. But yeah, I like all 3 of the modern ones. Although I think Star Trek 09 is by far the best of the 3. The other 2 get a little Into Darkness. I have a problem with it on the basis of its remaking the famous one. I think the John Harrison thing is just one of the stupidest things that they've done, that any director or studio has tried to lie to people, like trying to pretend that wasn't Khan.
Doesn't mean you hate
Khan.
The movie. You hate the promotion of the movie.
But you can't, like, the fact that they're trying to make you believe that he's not Khan when he's obviously Khan is annoying. And it makes it, as a
he just doesn't turn in a chair and he tasks me. If he did that, everybody would be fine. But overall, they try to make him John Harrison, and then he stands on the planet and looks up and like does his whole Khan thing, and they're like, "No, not Khan." Yeah, Benedict, you did fine.
I liked him as Khan. I just think that the John Harrison of it all is unnecessary, and like you didn't need to do that. Like to me, just like it felt like you were insulting the audience.
I think that was the tough boat, because when they were trying to do Khan, instead of just announcing it, because how the media works, it circulates that Benedict Cumberbatch is playing Khan, and then even more uproar. They get people in the theater, and then they release Khan. It's actually kind of smart that they were able to do that in this day and age, and no one actually technically find out. People knew he was Khan, but they didn't officially say it until then. So
it is an interesting. It's definitely a choice that it was a risky choice.
They probably going back would have changed that but the trick would change.
I think they would if given the opportunity to do that.
I think actually Benedict Cumberbatch has played Khan in every movie. They just haven't revealed it yet. Doctor Strange, he's also going to end up being Khan.
I think what they do,
Doctor in the multiverse.
They see DC, and they put Heath Ledger's Joker, and everybody was like, "Bullshit, this is crap." And they're like, "Well, next time we do a villain, we're not saying shit about it till it happens." That's what they did.
I mean, it's certainly possible. Yeah, Star Trek. We have interest. We have different takes in it. Although
you watched a fandom movie, I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Lucas watches what he wants now.
There you go.
Let's jump ahead and let's talk about a movie that is just what I think one of the most fun to talk about that we've talked about the entire time in this podcast. Zach and I are going to attempt to explain the plot. Zach, would you like me to go first, or do you want me to go second?
I would love to hear the synopsis breakdown of this movie.
Do you want me to start, or do you want to go start?
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's see. So we got Teddy Daniels. He's on a boat.
Zach's first character name he's ever remembered in this.
The first character name ever. I may have looked up him trying to say "We are U.S. Marshals" line to use as my nickname, and Teddy Daniels came up and on the Google search, so it was on the top of my brain, baby. Okay, Teddy Daniels. He is on the ship with Mark Ruffalo, character name Mark Ruffalo, and they are U.S. Marshals on the way to Shutter Island to investigate a patient that's gone missing. Shutter Island is a mental facility for like mental or prisoners who have, what's the right term?
Yeah, I believe the correct term is they are prisoners who are proven that their crimes were related to insanity charges.
Got it. Thank you. So they're on a way to there. Leo Teddy Daniels is very distracted by Mark Ruffalo saying that he's from Washington when he thought he was from Portland. They never like fully connect back to that. I think in the book it was addressed. It was like the early suspicion that he might not be who he says he is. Anyways, they go to Shutter Island. This big storm happening. People are creepy. Shit's going on. Teddy Daniels keeps having like dreams, nightmares, and flashbacks to his like war days and killing a soldier, and his wife keeps appearing with like ominous warnings or whatever. The person they're looking for supposedly got imprisoned after killing her children and drowning her children, so they keep kind of coming into his dreams as well. You should continue it from there because I feel like I'm going to skip an hour.
You have a tendency to do this when you plot summaries. Okay, so they're looking for her. They start talking to Ben Kingsley, who runs the psychiatric hospital. We start to learn more about the background of Teddy Daniels in the war, including the fact that he was part of the liberation of the Dachau concentration camp. At this point, the movie starts to get weirder and weirder. It's really starting to not only, as the character Teddy Daniels' reality gets messed with, you as the viewer's reality is also messed with. There are certain tics that happen in the movie. Characters write words on paper that don't make sense. There's messages revealed. the storm gets worse and worse. The story of the escaped prisoner becomes weirder and weirder. It doesn't make any sense how she escaped. The door was locked. The windows are barred. There was people watching, but none of them saw it.
He starts to become fixated on a couple other aspects too, and less on that original case. He becomes fixated on the idea of Andrew Laetus, who's supposedly a prisoner that is being kept there, that he says burned down or killed his wife in a fire. It was like a janitor at their building. He becomes very fixated on the idea of what the hospital is doing, that they are experimenting on their patients. Hear this from his friend George Noyce, that they're doing horrible things. And those start to seem like the ulterior motive to what he is going for rather than the mission.
Yeah, he starts to believe that potentially there's some kind of mind experiment, some kind of response to Soviet rise post-World War II. They keep searching. They keep coming upon weird locations. They're watched weirdly closely by the guards and people in charge of the thing. He decides to go to this lighthouse where they believe that the most severe patients are held. He sees what he
walks up really coolly with a gun up the stairs. Best shot in the movie.
That's like 45 minutes later than I am right now.
You're in the lighthouse.
No, we're looking for the lighthouse. He thinks his friend falls off the cliff and dies. He climbs down. He goes into a cave. He finds a escaped prisoner who he believes is the real woman who escaped. At this point, they've found Emily Mortimer playing the character and returned her. And now they're like, oh, you can leave now. He speaks to her. She talks about how that they've been like doping everyone psychotropically. He goes.
He might have been being drugged at the start if he drank anything.
Drinking to water and food and like aspirin and stuff. The movie gets weirder and weirder. He goes into the lighthouse. He walks up the stairs with his gun. He encounters Ben Kingsley.
That scene.
It's a great scene. Ben Kingsley shows him that Andrew Laetus, Dolores Chanel, like basically all the names of the women in the story and the men in the story are anagrams of each other. They're the same letters, just rearranged to form different words. It's revealed to him that he's actually patient 67, the one they've been looking for the entire time. He is there after a mental break. He's not. He was a former marshal who broke after his wife drowned all their children and then he killed her.
He's been mirroring all these incidents on fictional people.
Essentially, he can't deal with the fact that he committed a crime, so he's created a fictional reality. What he was described to at the beginning was all happening with other patients, so he could keep his sanity. They tell him that he either has to process his guilt and his crime and grow and to understand that he did these things and not create this fake reality, or he'll be lobotomized. You initially believe that he has changed and grown because he admits to being himself and of doing the crimes. And then at the end of the film, he goes back into regression and starts talking to Mark Ruffalo like he's his partner and like they're the two agents again. Mark Ruffalo at this point has been revealed to be actually his psychiatrist, playing the role in his delusion. At the end of the film, he utters the line, "Would it be worse to live as a monster or die as a good man?" And then walks towards Erdeles, clearly on the way to be lobotomized.
I love thoughts about this ending.
And the movie ends.
Okay, I just want to say, I think this is our simultaneously our best plot summary and our most boring because we were so detailed. I'm pretty sure Cody fell asleep.
No, I think you guys hit everything. It's such a complex movie when you think about it and everything that happens. And it's such a weird take from Scorsese. That's why I think it's fascinating because it's not the normal thing that he normally takes on. So yeah.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's probably closest like Cape Fear, and it still has like crime.
But the traditional Scorsese movie is they're actually marshals going to this island to look for a missing woman, and they discover that they are doing some kind of weird mind control, messed up stuff, like that. In what you would expect from a Scorsese, Teddy Daniels is a real character. He's not this fictional imagination of a mentally ill person.
He does it's like Cape Fear, bringing up the dead, and like this is like movies that are outside of his normal crime genre. But this one is one that just exceeds, in my opinion.
he is a director with a lot of love for the history of film, and we often throw, and I think unfairly sometimes, call movies Hitchcockian. It's the most thrown about term to describe any kind of thriller mystery is Hitchcockian, but I do feel like this is his only movie where he's trying to riff on Hitchcock at all. In a way, it's closer to the Vertigo level of Hitchcock, of the psychological kind of thriller parts of it. So I feel like that's probably where his interest was in doing this. But the two things about Shutter Island I think set this apart from his other movies is, one, on a more surface level, is this the only movie he has that has a twist to it? Because I kind of think it is, because those just formally function a different way when you have a twist. Yeah. It makes your movie work differently. And the second is, I think this is by far his most emotionally devastating movie. I don't think he hits tragedy as hard as in any of his other movies, and I just forgot how heartbreaking.
I disagree on that.
It really is, and heartbreaking in multiple components. Even when he, honestly, I think sadder than the ending is when he's having his first dream and you don't fully understand anything. But they have the Max Richter song that's also an Arrival. It's one of my favorite pieces of music ever written. The Nature of Daylight. Yeah, when that's playing and he sees the ashes of the building fly around him and Michelle Williams, and the CGI is not top quality, but I think that's just his most heartbreaking scene he's ever directed.
Let's talk about that. The most emotional film, because I think there's one other I can think of that's in the running for this, which is Silence. Is another one that is pretty emotionally devastating and really
a different wavelength though.
I mean, on a very different wavelength, but it is
not personal but spiritually
It's more grueling emotionally than it is devastating. Shutter Island is a film where you go along and you think everything's normal and he's just looking for the conspiracy. You think you're watching a sort of very traditional crime, psychological thriller movie. And then you get these twists where you're realizing that this is all in his mind and his warped delusions. And that's something that is different than Silence. Silence is more the just constantly just getting crapped on and just not being able to hold the faith, and you're just getting forced into harder and harder positions, and you have to choose between your religion and people dying. It's devastating in a very different way, but I think those are the two where probably the two most emotionally devastating thing he's worked on, although I would agree that Shutter Island is very different than Silence.
But Silence still plays into a lot of what Scorsese has always fretted upon, which is faith and spirituality and the realities of the world coming to conflict with that. Well, this is more just pure emotional and personal in a different way. Personal as in your relationships, things happen to you, the trauma. It's this most trauma induced. I think in general, it's what makes the movie really be superb for me. As thrillers can sometimes just function on the poppy level. Just go for the thrills, go for the twist. But Scorsese having a twist, the twist has complete purpose thematically and emotionally to everything else that is going on. It is not there just to oh my gosh, he was dead all along, or he was a patient all along, but it really played to what the rest of the movie was really doing. Watching on the second time now, I focus so much that the whole movie is not about the case. It's about Teddy Daniels the whole time. It's about his psychological issues the whole time. So the twist just reinforces that, internal mystery that low key the movie's about the whole time.
I do think it's a movie that is better on rewatch because the first time you watch it, a lot of the Teddy Daniels mind break stuff is confusing. So you're confused about what's happening. You're I thought I'm watching them investigate. And you're why do they keep doing these dreams? And I think that's one of the reasons the movie was sort of only mildly positively received on initial release. Because I think that on rewatch you start understanding, all the weird stuff starts getting tied into the puzzle. The first time it's just weird and you're confused, and the second time you're oh right, because this is a movie about a mental break, not about the search for a woman. Because in reality, her character is irrelevant. She doesn't matter.
Completely different experiences.
Yeah,
but
yeah. My buddy, when he showed me this movie in college the first time, he said, we watched it, and he's I was man, that was good. And he's okay, we're going to rewatch it. And I said, what? He's just watch it again, but don't pay attention to Teddy as much, look around him and see what happens. And the stuff you pick up on the second viewing is crazy. How the guards hold the guns tighter around him, where they interact with him, where they all know, like outside, like they're playing. Why you think they're being weird cops at the beginning on first watch? Yeah. Like, why are they doing the decisions they're making? But now you realize he's a patient, and they're letting him live out this fantasy in real life. That's why they take his gun. That's why they play on the stuff. It's crazy on a rewatch. I'm with you. That's why I don't think if you watch this film one time, I feel like I understand why you're like, I'm not a huge fan of it, or like it didn't hit with me. But if you watch it the second time, I don't say you have to do it back to back, but like the next time you watch it, pick up on those things. I think the movie is 10 times better that way, because you're right. Because the first time I watched it, I'm like, why are they writing all these weird things that make no sound? All these flashbacks. I thought I know where we're going. I know the direction of this movie, what it's going to take me, but it feels like it's taking 7 different detours instead of going the path it should go. But it plays perfect. And the emotionally draining, I don't think there's a more emotional draining head shake in film history. Like just a simple and just like, oh gosh, when you think like I still have a buddy that thinks he broke it like completely, and like that's the whole thing. Did he break it? Did he not? But
okay. Do we want to talk about this now?
Oh, sorry, I jumped.
I was going to say it just because it's the end, but let's just talk about it.
Yeah, so
this is a couple of days ago. I almost messaged Lucas, was saying I really want to talk about the ending. It's like, no, I should just save it for the podcast. And I think it's more obvious than I expected. I think I was so focused the first time on. I read the book. And like the book's a banger. And so the first time I was just interested in how they, unraveled the mystery, but I knew everything that was happening. But I still was focused on it as a twist movie and a thriller rather than the emotional drama that it is. I don't think it treated it fairly. So I was really focused on it as an adaptation. To where I was also bringing in some of my assumptions from reading the book, which I'm not a top-level reader. I have attention issues, so I'm sure there's like a lot of cues and things that I missed. But I was taking those assumptions and putting that into the movie. And this time around, just taking the movie as is, the ending, I think, is completely different than how I've read it before, which is I think he broke it. I think there's multiple clues being given that he is making the choice to get the lobotomy, to go with them and like act like he hasn't lost it because he doesn't want to live with that grief, but more of it as an active choice rather than that subconscious kind of dementia or insanity that was before. I think the 2 big cues is one is the big line. That line makes no sense coming out of a man who is living out his delusion. Saying live as a monster, die as a former monster. That's someone encapsulating what they're going, or die. I read my fucking name. Live as a monster or die as a good man. He's encapsulating his whole journey. That's someone who is awoke, essentially, with what he's going through. And that's him saying, I'm going to make the choice to die as like a mortal man because I can't keep living, being aware of my issues. That he doesn't say that in the thing. And then he willingly walks to the guards. And once again, if he was, living out the delusion, trying to solve the mystery, he's not going to walk away from his partner and to the guards to go to his body. He knew what he was doing. So I think this was just a willing choice to just end it, just get rid of his brain. He doesn't have to have the memories anymore, essentially.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's exactly.
I fucking missed all of that the first time.
Yeah, and I think on this last watch that I did too, like the whole, like when you see him, because you're right, when he breaks the thing at the very end, when he sits there talking and Mark Ruffalo's like, okay, and then he switches back to it, and the head shake is just like, no. But I think I'm safe to say in this last viewing, he knows exactly what he did. He broke it. This is just the way this is the only way he can live with himself beyond this point. So, but I'm with you. I've watched this movie 5-6 times. I'm like, no, like he clearly, it just didn't work. It broke and blah, blah, blah. But then I think that adds more weight to Ruffalo's head shake because I think Ruffalo also knows, like to an extent, like he is.
The head shake was before any of those actions I mentioned that DiCaprio takes.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, that's true.
See, I don't know if Ruffalo's aware of it, but I do think, yeah, I think DiCaprio is I think he is choosing to I think it's the realization of a man who realizes that he can't keep up the fallacy of being an agent anymore, that he can't keep that reality has been broken by him admitting it doesn't exist anymore and talking to Kingsley. And then I think he had to make a choice, which is that I don't think he could reclaim that reality he built for himself. So that the only option that could prevent him from having to live daily with the pain of losing his family would be to let himself be lobotomized and remove this sense of awareness and sense of having
essentially a suicide.
Yes, it is essentially a suicide. It's a mental suicide. He is choosing to give up his faculties to prevent the continued feeling of pain.
Rather than live as a monster.
I think it's not just. I don't think it's just a monster. I think he doesn't want to deal with anything from his past. I think it's not just the family. I think it also relates to the actions in World War II and having to experience all that. I think he was haunted by that even before the bad stuff in his family happened. If you go back to the beginning, there's a scene with Michelle Williams, which talks about he's drinking all the time. And I think that is he's been broken multiple times. He was broken by the war, and then he was broken by his family all dying. So I think in some respects, he's choosing to get rid of several different loads of pain at the end of the film when he chooses to be lobotomized. It's not just to get rid of the actions of killing his wife and losing his family. It's also because of all the war stuff. I think even if he could build a reality that prevented him from having to feel the pain of losing his family, he would still be stuck with all the pain and the horror of what he'd encountered at Dachau.
Well, and I just want to touch on the thing that I was talking about. Is basically not the head shake at that point, but when Teddy and him are sitting on there and he turns to him and says, this place makes me wonder. And he does the whole live like a monster, die as a good man, and then gets up and walks, and Ruffalo looks at him, has his face, and then says, Teddy, he looks on his face, wait, something you just said doesn't sit right with me, on that moment. And he just continues to walk forward with it. And Ruffalo has no sense. I just looked it back up because I was I thought I remembered, but yeah, it's that scene is just so, because I feel that's the moment, because they're both looking down and then he looks at him and shakes his head. It's that's when Ruffalo's wait a minute. Hold on, but he just lets him continue walking. I think what you said, it's like a suicide, basically. Let him walk into because he's not going to continue living the way he did. Because what he told him originally when the plot, he's it's not working. He's back to where he was, and they're okay. And now just that brief, he turns it back on because he clearly is out of whatever they think that is wrong with him. It's crazy. It's such a complex movie.
Yeah, and I think you're really led to believe that Mark Ruffalo and Ben Kingsley really have their heart in the right place. They're not just in it for the innovation like some of the other scientists may be, but they're really trying to help him, if anything, and help other patients by making this breakthrough. Yeah, so I think with that Ruffalo reaction at the end, with him possibly realizing that this is a choice that Teddy is making, it's kind of that devastating of not just when you thought you had made a breakthrough, but realizing you actually did make a breakthrough, but it still didn't help. It's still they're stuck in their misery, and that makes it almost seem more insurmountable. You can maybe solve the delusions, but how do you solve their pain?
Yeah. He broke down all the walls of his fake thing, but overall, it's still he can't live in the reality that you want him to live in. So,
I think also one thing that's clear is that even in the world that Teddy builds for himself, this fake reality, Ruffalo and Kingsley are the positive people in that world, and people like Max von Sydow are still the villains. I think there's an indication that that's something that goes from reality to the world he creates, is that certain people on that island are viewed as positive and allies to him, and certain people are viewed as negative. Clearly he must have had a good relationship with Ruffalo, even in the real world, outside of the fantasy he's created for himself. Otherwise, that character never would have ended up in the position of his partner in the reality he created for himself.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Van Sydow and Ted Levine's character both represent kind of living as the monster, essentially, with the quote. They're people who are embracing the sense of violence that they think is natural to all humans, which then that becomes part of the choice that Teddy's having to make. Can he be one of them that he was arguing, with Ted Levine over, is it natural for us all to be violent creatures or violent men, or we, deemed to rule the world? So he's fighting that impulse with his more moral side of, no, we should not live in violence or embrace our violence and avoid it by committing suicide. So I think that's where those two characters, kind of function as villains, because they're just part of that, thematic metaphor in a sense.
Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to bring up, which is that, do you guys think this movie works better and is maybe received differently if this is a more straightforward psychological thriller where these two guys are law officers investigating the disappearance and the weirdness going on this island? Like, I think we've talked about how interesting and fascinating it is to like have all this crazy psychological stuff going on. But is this movie better received or a better movie if it's more straightforward? Something maybe we would expect more from Scorsese?
I don't feel like it would be a better film. I feel like it would appease more people being an opposite way. I think both movies.
How I think.
I think both movies can be successful, but as the world we live on, like, I've watched this movie 5 or 6 times at this point, and I'm still unpacking things from watching it and like finding enjoyment throughout it. If it was straightforward, I think it could be considered one of Scorsese's like top tier movies because of the subject matter of it. I mean, it's still not going to be the gangster kind of thing that he's, most known for. But overall, I think people just need to give it another watch, if anything. I think this is a movie that doesn't hit out of the ballpark for the first time watch, but I think if you watch it again, it has that same appeal to be up there in Scorsese's top 10. I've always defended the movie, and people are like, it's just so weird. It has so many things. That's the point of the movie. Like, it's Teddy's world that you're like, it's hard to explain for people that just, they want, a crime comedy or crime element. And it's not, this is a crime with psychological thriller, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a reason that this movie has in recent years gained a really strong following among like the hardest of hardcore film lovers and like film Twitter. Like, this movie has a very what?
And I think a lot of real Scorsese fans, lovers are starting to re-embrace this as one of his better movies.
Well, yeah, I think also in just respect of like the people who would be the most likely to watch this multiple times and get caught up reading articles about it and like delving into like the all the details of the people that I think this movie has built like a really strong following in. The people who kind of just watch it once as it's a Martin Scorsese movie, I should watch that. I think that is the group that has the much lower take on this film. What do we think of does the ending, do you want to go farther with the ending? Is the ending too early? Do we like the fact that
what would going farther entail?
Him getting a lobotomy, him going under.
Do we need to see him getting a lobotomy? Is that like
no?
Does that make the story more impactful if you get to see kind of the end of Teddy, Teddy to lose?
I think with the needle on it, like when he's walking towards him, is all you need to see at that point to where it is. And I think it just, again, some people I've talked to some people about this movie. They hate how like negative the ending really is because like the character you've walked around for this entire time is now going off to pretty much not be him anymore. But I think it works perfectly when that score kicks back in and they're just walking off and you're just like, and Ruffalo's standing on the stairs and Kingsley looks like he's about to cry because they tried their best. Like, I love the ending of this movie. It's again, since 2010, it's made me question and reanalyze and be like, oh, does he know? Is he in it? Is he not in it? The ending just works for me. I think it's so good.
I mean, it's a true tragedy in the classical sense of the term, I think there is still character growth in what Teddy, we get to see him open up with his pain, and that is real growth. And sometimes that growth just is not enough. And that's where tragedy kind of relies. It can still end in sadness and kind of back at square one, essentially.
I do think it's interesting.
I don't know why you would want to see the lobotomy.
I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying I thought it was a question that we could debate. I do think it's funny. Off of Cody said that people are like, this ending is real downer. I I feel like those people have never seen a Martin Scorsese film.
Do you think that
half the movies
fans...
end with somebody getting shot in the head? I mean, it's not an uplifting genre of endings.
Do you think that casual audiences would embrace it more if he did overcome his thing, and it just ended up like, oh yeah, I'm ready to move on, and they like start making progress to his recovery?
Because that's what I always tell about myself is I have problems. Like I like depressing stuff at the end of movies and stuff like that. That makes me like feel something like, oh, that's just that. I think the general audience would be like, oh, it's the same. Like I'll put it in a movie that I hate, but like La La Land. If they were to end up together, people would enjoy that movie a lot more if they actually ended up together and they were married and moved on. I still think the movie's crap either way. But the people that need those happy endings, like Ruffalo and him turn to him and say, you know, and breaks it, and they're like, yeah, oh my God. And then this whole thing, I just think that that's not the movie that it is. And yeah, and I agree with you. Scorsese, if you talk about downers, that's basically all his movie. Like The Irishman, he ends up in a room by himself at the end with the door open and no one around him. Like that's The Irish.
There's no happier ending than Taxi Driver, where the hero Travis Bickle saves a prostitute and kills all the horrible criminal gangsters.
And then takes a like dream ride around the thing. You know, that's my favorite part ever. That's why I hate that. I hate that ending of Scorsese's movie. I hate that ending.
I was joking. That's not what the ending's about.
Well, I know. Okay. We can talk about that after this.
I will. Okay, so I will answer Zach's question and say I actually don't think a happy ending changes the response to this movie, because I think that people were out on this movie the minute they had to go from watching a movie about Mark Ruffalo and Leonardo DiCaprio hunting a disappearing woman, and the minute it switches to like Leo's mental break, I think that was when the more casual audience was out of the movie to begin with, and I don't think a happy ending changes that. I think that they wanted the straightforward, like, oh, it's two federal marshals trying to find this woman and uncovering some kind of conspiracy. And I think the minute it's like, oh, it's actually Leo's a patient, I think that was the minute that people were out of the movie.
That's probably
I think Scorsese movies just have kind of a history of being read to surface level, because he is so engaging and thrilling as a director, that you can take those stories essentially just on that level and not really dive. And he's just like a super smart man and not really dive into what he's doing in these movies. The same people that, you know, may just want this to be a thriller, the same people that think Goodfellas might be embracing gangster culture, or thinking that, you know, Wolf of Wall Street is embracing that culture, rather than seeing how he's indicting these characters, or really, you know, putting a microscope on this world, which in this is not putting a microscope on a community, but putting a microscope on the idea of grief and pain, and not just trying to be a mystery. He tells engaging stories, but like with an actual mind and heart and, you know, spirit to him.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about DiCaprio. Do you have any other performances in this film you really like? I think that Jackie Earle Haley, like, one scene is really effective. I think there's something about his physicality that's very weird, and I think he fits really well in these scenes.
Jackie Earle Haley was really having a moment in 2009, 2010. Everyone thought he was really coming back as like this top big actor. You know, it's a kid from Bad News Bears. He's like Oscar nominated for Little Children, and then he was in Shutter Island and
Nightmare on Elm Street.
And I think he has, because Watchmen, what year was that? Was that 2009? It was around the same time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. But I think this is like, he can play one scene or support performances, kind of going over the top, which his character needs to. And that's where he best fits. But with that, I would say in 2010, I'm trying to look a couple of things up to back up this story. I said I was already a huge fan of the book before the movie was announced, because I loved Dennis Lehane. I read Dennis Lehane after watching Mystic River, and read Mystic River.
Lehane?
Lehane.
I think it's Lehane.
Yeah, sure. Anyway. This was like the most anticipated I've ever been for like a movie. I was so excited about Shutter Island, because the book, banger, was one of my favorite books at the time. And they announced Leo, and that's like Leo post Departed, and like really at the like height of him becoming this like serious crime and like gritty actor, which I think he's kind of moved. We forget how he was just like so dour and serious around the like late aughts. And then I think started with like Django and then Wolf of Wall Street. a lighter side started to come out of him. But like fucking Leo, I was all on board with him being on it. And for some reason, I'm trying to look up why. I was like really excited about Mark Ruffalo. But what did he do at the time? The Brothers Bloom? I'm not sure. Zodiac, but I wasn't a fan of Zodiac in 2007.
Wow.
So I don't know. But for some reason, like Mark Ruffalo really caught my attention. And Jackie O'Haley because he was having a moment. I was also really into Emily Mortimer. Like I thought that was like Emily Mortimer and Shutter Island. Fuck yeah, because I think she was in Larson, the Real Girl. 18-year-old Zach was having some experiences with specific actors. But the cast in 2010 really fucking exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean it's a really good cast of. This is like a very Ruffalo role. He almost always is like the kind of solid everyday person next to like the more flashier performance. He often gets the weirdly because then he goes on the spotlight and he has the really big scene stealer in that one. But up until that point, he was often the guy who didn't get the scene stealing role in the movie that had more scene stealing parts. I think Kingsley's pretty good in it. I think
he's there for exposition. He kind of has a thankless role in a way. He's just there to explain everything that was happening.
But he does a damn good job of doing it.
If you're going to get someone to deliver the explanation, you got to get someone who could do it with like the most authority possible.
I feel like Michelle Williams has done a billion movies like this where she's like amazing in it, but also in like 3 scenes. I feel like this has been so much of her career for like the last 10 to 15 years. It's just like 3 really good scenes in movies, but not getting like a really large part that maybe you would have liked.
Is she the Hall of Fame dour, tragic, depressing romance actress of all time? Is she the best? I'm thinking 3 movies specifically. Okay. Between this, Manchester, and Blue Valentine, which are just fucking grueling, emotional performances in movies that she has done. I think she is.
I haven't seen Blue Valentine, but I will definitely these 2. I will definitely agree with you because as somebody just rewatched Manchester by the Sea, I slept on that movie way too much that year.
We love that movie.
I honestly find this more devastating than Manchester. I think because of the levity in Manchester. Manchester is super funny.
I don't know. Yeah, Manchester is depression by the sea. God,
our Manchester episode is just me and Lucas talking about how funny Manchester is.
It is a sneaky funny movie, which I think is.
No, you're 100% right. There are some funny points, but man, I am sad.
Yeah, the police station scene is rough. There's a lot of scenes in that film that are devastating.
Yeah, yes, the hardest.
Michelle Williams, yeah, I think she's really good at playing sadness, which I feel like is something we underrate because so often people play sadness in this like hysterical, over the top. But for the vast majority of people, sadness is this really like it really dulls you down, and you become like this like almost like not 100% there person who's kind of just like sleepwalking through the world. A lot of like most people don't experience sadness as like screaming and banging on walls and like having like hysterics. A lot of times it's just destructive and like crushes you as a person, but not in a way that like you express that to the rest of the world.
This is a really interesting comparative performance of hers in Manchester because Manchester is like the snotty, naturalistic version of having an emotional meltdown, essentially. Well, this is a little more the opposite. This is more in denial. This is a little more like she's wearing the pain and the depression. In the end, that final reveal scene in her body still looks so worn, but her face and her actions are in that like insane, delusional, manic depressiveness part of it. So the misery can still be read just by how she carries herself, even though she's giving lines like "Let's go on a picnic with our kids," and her like the creepiest performance she's ever given. So she really can capture like all the layers of someone who's just living with all the grief and all the depression.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about the inclusion of "On the Nature of Daylight," which is one of these like in every movie thing songs.
Yeah. The 2 best twist movies that exist to me, because helps the movie focus on the emotional aspects between this and Arrival.
And of course, Zach is talking about The Trip and Stranger Than Fiction.
Yes. Is it in those movies?
It is also in those. It is in Gyro Dreams of Sushi, the documentary.
It's also just a great fucking album. So I think Blue Notebook's the name of the album. Max Richter, listen to all his shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's also in like every YouTube compilation of great acting scenes. If you go, I guarantee this. Go right now and like Google like best acting in movies on YouTube and watch like compilations people put together. That song will be in like half of them, if not more. It's great.
It almost
music
makes me feel bad about saying it's one of my favorite pieces of music. I'm a fucking cliche. This is like the only neoclassical thing that.
Why don't you have an original thought, Zach? Jeez.
I know it's fucking boring, but I do think like we're gonna go on real music corner for Zach. So neoclassical music, great.
You're gonna take a nap now.
Great genre right now, and it's in the top form. But what it is essentially is it can hold up. It has a lot, to compare with classical music. There's still strings, and the compositions can be somewhat similar, but the song. They're more songs than compositions. They're a little shorter, they're a little more accessible and simplistic compared to what like Beethoven and Mozart were doing. But the focus on like emotion through the music is where the similarity to classical comes from. So I think Max Richter in this song is probably the neoclassical song that I think can best fit like with classical music as some of the best made music ever. I don't think we need to dismiss it because it's newer and say, how can you compare it to Beethoven? I think it fucking compares to Beethoven. It's just like a perfect, piece of having emotions react to music.
Would you compare it to Beethoven or Mahler? Because I feel like it feels more Mahler.
I don't fucking know classical, so get off my ass.
It just sounds like, to me, it feels more Mahler than it does feel
sure.
What's
your thoughts?
I agree.
Who's your favorite classical or neoclassical musician?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I'll get back to you. I came to talk about.
I was hoping you would say like ludicrous.
Move, bitch. Get out of the way.
Let's do some final thoughts. Zach, what's your final take on Shutter Island? Any final small little crumbs you want to share with our audience?
If you are basing your take on this movie from your first time watching it, then it's not a fair take, because that's how I was for years. I said I think, judging it harshly on it as an adaptation. It's like everyone when they're watching a movie based on a book they love, but I think there's so much that sets apart from the book. I think Disley, as a poppy crime writer, is still like really smart, but can't elevate his material emotionally as much as Scorsese is able to do and thematically. I think Scorsese really had his kind of point of wanting to make this. So I think people need to watch it with a different lens. Instead of trying to figure out the crime and the mystery, just trying to go on Teddy's journey and really go into his head. It's better when you know what happens. So watch again.
Absolutely. Cody, you have final thoughts on the wonderful Shutter Island?
Yeah, I'm 100% with Zach. Like, if you watch this one time, and I think that's why I was such a big fan of it, because I watched it back to back, and I was able to unpack it right away. And I'm glad my friend told me to do that when we did it. But yeah, I would just say go in, like, if you're new to Scorsese or you're trying, like, you like his other stuff, like, this movie is going to take more viewings than a Goodfellas or maybe a Wolf of Wall Street. It's off of his normal beaten path, but it has a lot to unpack. And honestly, I think it's it's probably his most depressing movie, like moving movie for me in there. So yeah, I would definitely go check it out. And if you're going to check it out, I would schedule another viewing sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like definitely read some film criticism about this, engage with the film. I would also, off what you're saying, I would not do Shutter Island first. Watch like 5 other Scorsese movies, kind of get into the grain, and like you need to be more invested with him as a career and like be willing to engage with this film.
Watch this, then Hugo, then go back to this, and then you'll be better off.
It's actually just the drive-by shooting on Hugo.
No, I think Hugo's a nice, refreshing movie.
Okay.
To this, and then go back.
Good.
No, I like Hugo too. There's just like a weird contingent of people who like hate Hugo, and I'm like, what, an all-time great director making a really good kids movie? Why are we hating on this?
Joe Pesci doesn't
direct Paddington 3. I think you should.
Let's go.
Paddington just fucking mows 5 people out at the end of the film. I will
give that bear some coke.
It's an interesting take on how to ruin a beloved children's book character. We were talking about this off mic, how the career movies that are based on Dennis Lehane novels. I've seen all of them.
Lehane.
I believe it's Lehane.
I speak the way I speak.
Yes, yes. The author is from my part of the country and not yours, so I think my accent may be slightly more accurate to this. Yeah, he makes. He's one of these really cool writers that just writes good crime novels that get adapted into good movies. In case you weren't aware, his books were adapted into The Drop with Tom Hardy, Gone Baby Gone, the Ben Affleck film, Live by Night, the Ben Affleck film, Mystic River, and then Shutter Island. So it's a pretty decent list, minus Live by Night, which is trash.
Mystic River as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that's what brought me into the Dennis Lehane.
Oh wait, you have a trash opinion on that, so we're not going to talk to you.
I like Mystic River.
Oh, okay, maybe you're somebody else.
No. You don't like my take on which Sean Penn performance I prefer. I still like Mystic River quite a lot. I just like
it's a great Dennis Lehane story. That is, he always has the right level of like moral concern and that compromise, but he's so interested in the moral dilemmas we face in the world. I think that makes it a step higher than the average crime novel or pulp writer.
My favorite thing also about this movie, if you type Shutter Island in any search box at any time ever, it will follow by explain. Like, no one has anything else. Everybody's searching for somebody to explain this movie to them. So I think it's hilarious. It's ending and explain. It's literally back to back. Like,
that's amazing. I love search suggestions. They're we were googling through a couple ones the other day. There's some real crazy ones that I don't understand related to the quality of certain states or not. Rhode Island, I don't get it. I don't get it. Everyone really hates certain things about you. I will say, of all the works of his, I think Gone Baby Gone is the best film adaptation. I really like that one.
I don't know where I stand. I need to rewatch Mystic River. And
I need to rewatch Mystic River too.
That would be between Shutter Island and Gone Baby Gone. I think Shutter Island's just I think Gone Baby Gone's a great story, and I said that's when Dennis Lehane's like moral dilemmas are his like highest and heartbreaking. Okay. I think Shutter Island's such a better directed movie and crafted. Gone Baby Gone has some flashes of being a first movie by Ben Affleck. I think some of the definitely editing techniques can be a little melodramatic, but the story's so good. He does craft it, pretty beautifully. And Casey Affleck,
legend.
Personal issues aside, big fans of him as an actor.
Very pro Casey Affleck podcast. We might be the most positive Casey Affleck podcast in the world.
As an actor.
He's also excellent on SNL. Very funny on SNL.
I do not remember this, and I am such a bigger SNL fan than you.
I still watch his Dunkin' Donuts skit like at least twice a week.
Oh, okay.
It's hysterical. It's such a good bit. It's one of like the all-time favorite SNL bits.
Yeah, Coho hates Casey Affleck as an actor, not as also as a person, I'm pretty sure, but hates him as an actor. It's funny.
That's such a bad take.
He has an atrocious takes about the 2016 Best Actor field.
He says it's the worst. He says he's the worst winner of the 21st century,
which is insane because we have people like lip syncing Rami Malek that won Oscars.
And Adrian Brody is still there in the pianist. I'm sorry, but he doesn't do anything.
There's some rough options. I don't understand how you make that argument. Were you going to say that?
Yeah. I need Cole to come and defend this because I don't even understand how that could be a take. But what's the evidence?
I mean, he'd have to show up for a taping to be able to come defend his takes.
Well, put a Pirates movie on. They go to an island, don't they? He'd be here.
Well, I'm the crazy person. I had Casey Affleck. I think he should have been Best Supporting Actor nominated for Old Man and the Gun. So I might be a little...
I wanted Robert Redford to get Oscar nominated for that.
You should do Pirates of the Caribbean at some point and not invite him.
We would have done that.
We're going
to everyone voted for planes instead of boats.
I love this podcast.
Looking back, we were so mad that we gave them 3 options for transportation, and they picked the least interesting one.
That was a great month, though.
It was fun.
I feel like that's where we found our voice.
Boat movies are way better than plane movies, and train movies are also probably better than plane movies. Although we kind of already did all the train movies we needed to do.
Yeah, I think train movies have a good there's a good list of quality movies that happen on trains.
You get some Hitchcock. Yeah.
And DeVito.
Yeah, always.
But we got to do the classic Air Force One, so I don't know what you're talking about.
The Air Force One has our all-time favorite moment when the jet fighter for the U.S. jumps the plane directly in front of
got you, buddy! And it flies and then takes a missile.
It's the dumbest CGI moment I've almost ever seen. It looks like a sci-fi original, and it's hysterical that it does that.
Oh, gosh.
Like some kind of mega shark versus giant octopus scene.
Lucas,
yes.
This is Space Jam New Legacy all over again, where we're going a half hour longer because we're having off-camera conversation on camera.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to tell our audience. First, I'm going to thank Cody, because Cody is one of our favorite guests, and we will definitely have him back. He's always fun to have on, and we like a lot of the same movies, so that certainly makes it easier to find Cody as a guest. I will also tell our audience, September, we are covering films by modern horror auteur directors because of the release of the James Wan film.
What movies? No one knows. We'll discover when we start taping it.
That's right. You will find out
in September.
When we drop that first episode, we will tell you, because I'm gonna be honest, we haven't picked the movies yet, so we will we'll get back to you. But there's a lot of I'm doing research, and there's a lot of people who can be considered horror auteurs that I would rather eat broken glass than cover their movies. So we'll get back to you. We'll find some good ones. Yeah, thank you to everyone for watching, listening, subscribe, comment, do all the things you can do on the different platforms. Thank you, Cody. Thank you. And we will be back next month with movies by modern horror auteur directors. Zach, you want to say something?
It'll be fun. I was going to say I love you. Good riddance. Good luck. Goodbye. I forgot how to do this.
Peace out, folks.